Hi, Alan Stratton from Woodturning. I would love to tell you a great story about this segmented bowl and how fantastic it is, a new technique or whatever. No, not this time. This is one of those projects where I had grand plans for it. A shallow top bowl, a pedestal, hidden chamber, almost a Grecian form, classic, but it did not turn out that way. It was one of those times when one thing after another went wrong. So rather than a great story, this is a story of when things go wrong, they go wrong. Let's make a segmented oak bowl.
I've already glued up all the rings. I'm pretty happy with the glue up, and the rings are well cured. I'm starting with the top rim. I want a nice flare to the rim, so I'm fitting the topmost ring with a mortise and tenon joint to its neighbor, so that it can function as one ring. I could have made a very wide ring, but I like to split the two to take advantage of glue joints for strength. I fear for one very wide ring. I'll cut the mortise first, but I'm getting some awful catches that I attribute to my faceplate flexing, so I'll proceed very carefully, first cutting the mortise. Finally, I had success with my skew, point first into the mortise. Then switch over to the tenon. I'll start with my square carbide cutter. Once it fits, I'll remove the ring from the faceplate. Then glue the two rings together. Finally, I sandwich it all together again for clamping pressure from the tailstock. With these two rings glued, I'll face them off to accept the third ring down. I'm getting some bad catches that I don't understand. I clean them up and proceed very carefully. I'm working late at night and my light is a little dim. While the glue dries, I'm also working on the base that I did not use after things fell apart. Now back to facing off the last ring glued. I'm proceeding carefully since there is still too much flex in the faceplate. I also want to reduce the thickness of the ring by at least a 1/4 inch. Then glue the next ring on. As for the faceplate, I need to make one that is bigger and more solid for pieces of this size. While not necessary, I tooled out some of the center of the last ring to reduce the area needing to be flat to receive glue. Then flatten the ring like the others and glue on the next ring. And again, flatten the ring after reducing its thickness. I want the bowl to flare more with each increment of height, and glue on the next ring. Now with the vibration, I'm using a small round nose scraper to smooth the last ring. When there it goes. The threaded portion of the faceplate cracked and the bowl flew across the room. Although it only hit me on the arm, I was glad I was wearing my face shield. In retrospect, the vibration was probably the crack developing. The faceplate portion that cracked was a low-density poplar, not the more dense heartwood that I like to use. Now what to do? I wasn't ready to add it to the fire. Let's try to salvage it. I cannot use the old faceplate. Since the bottom of the last ring was rough from the earlier flight across the shop, I decided to sand it with my lathe-mounted sanding disc. There's no way it will be perfect, but I'll try to save it. There's only another ring to glue on. Then I switched over to the bottom ring I had prepared for the bowl. First, I reduced its diameter to match the last segment of the bowl, and since it was not flat yet, but still on a faceplate, I tooled it flat. Meanwhile, I used a handsaw to remove the rest of the threaded portion of the large cracked faceplate. Next, I glued the bottom to the rest of the bowl. Since I still had somewhat of a faceplate on both ends, I used them to apply clamping pressure. But this introduced a small bit of off-centeredness. I hoped my bowl's walls were still thick enough to round it out again. I wanted to turn the smaller bottom of the bowl, so I screwed a metal faceplate onto the remaining portion of the original large faceplate. I'm sure this introduced a little more error. Knowing the blank was seriously out of round now, I felt I had to turn it between centers. I also wanted to work the outside. At this point, I still wanted to include the pedestal in the design, so I needed to turn a box joint on the bottom of the bowl. So with a gouge, I turned the bowl round again, then went on to flatten the bottom to accept one more ring. About this time, I changed my mind again about my plan. Things had just not gone well, so I decided to scale back the project and omit the pedestal. Then I proceeded to glue on another faceplate so I could turn the interior. I put a piece of white paper in the glue joint to make it easier to remove later. After the glue dried, I did a little more work on the exterior before removing it from the large faceplate. After reversing the bowl, I realized it would still be out of round, so I proceeded to round it out, again starting with the top and rim. But bad luck struck again. Between fresh glue, small gluing surface, and whatever, the joint split through the paper. It just did not fly violently this time. Now I'm sure this is only a salvage operation. I cleaned off the bottom and the faceplate, then glued it together again without paper in the joint, but introduced yet more error. With it out of round, I feared the faceplate could break loose. I placed a small wood faceplate in the interior of the bowl and held it there with a cone center on the tailstock. This gave me a measure of confidence and safety while tooling it round again. Now to go for the finish line. Starting with a gouge, I roughed out first the exterior of the bowl. This is all face grain, no end grain, so this is very nice turning. But the bowl is definitely off its original axis, wherever that was. Then I went on to hollowing out the interior, starting with the out of round rim. With the rim balanced, I removed the tailstock so I could get to the rest of the interior. Then some finishing work with a large bowl scraper, followed by a small round nose scraper and my skew as a scraper. Then sand from 80 grit to 400 grit by hand. Then finish with my mix of mineral oil and beeswax, and part off the bowl from the faceplate. Then for the bottom, I reversed the bowl onto a flat padded faceplate using the center I had marked previously on the bottom. But even this was not very well centered. I went on anyway and flattened out the bottom before dishing it out a little bit. I trimmed down the center nub to almost nothing, then after removing the bowl from the lathe, I whittled off the little center nub and hand sanded the remainder. So I have a pretty oak bowl. It's just not what I intended. From a distance and to someone who is not a wood turner, it looks normal. A wood turner, however, would quickly see differences in the ring width from being off axis. It was a compounding of errors and accidents. I seriously thought about scrapping this video, but it is my experience, good or bad. Although now I'm thinking about a segmented bowl that has rings that are deliberately off-center. Stay tuned. Maybe something great will yet come from this project. If you agree with my decision to post this video despite its errors, please click the like button and subscribe to both my website and YouTube channel. If I should not have posted this video and just scrapped it, please click the dislike button. What would you have done on this project? Either way, please wear a good face shield. As you see in this video, there is no time to react and move. Ducking is not an option. When the wood goes, it's already too late. Until the next video, this is Alan Stratton from As Wood Turns.